What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Another video means another dopamine high because I had to buy something that feels something, and today we're back at it with another review. For today's review, we are taking a look at the Jazwares Vault Halo, the Spartan Collection, Spartan Yokai. And it's kind of crazy that I am reviewing this figure because this figure was supposed to originally release alongside with Series 7 of the Spartan Collection, but it never did. This is allegedly due to Jazwares quality control never being satisfied with the figure, so they wanted to take their time and really cook with this figure. At least that's from my understanding from the rumors that I heard online. But one series and complete store overhaul later, it's the great year of 2025, and here we have the Spartan Yokai. And this is actually our second Tenrai figure that we have in the Spartan collection. The first one was in Series 4 with the Spartan Yoroi. But now my question is, since we've gotten the Spartan Yokai, is Jazwares ever going to give us Douglas? Douglas was supposed to release with Wave 8, but suffered the same fate as the Yokai. And if Jazwares can bring back the Spartan Yokai, can they give us Douglas, please? Like, I would really love the Finnish Red Team. And I know Douglas is out there. I mean, if you go to eBay, you can see all of these Douglas figures being sold from Mexico. I don't know what happened or why they're all popping up from Mexico, but I could easily just go to eBay and pick one up. But I would like an official Jazwares release so I can pay that $20 price tag that I'm assuming they would give them, seeing that's how much the Spartan Yokai was, which at any point during or after the video you do realize you want to pick up this figure for yourself, there will be a link in the description of the video to the Jazwares Vault website for the Spartan Yokai. But yeah, no, I spent $20 on this figure, and I would love to spend $20 on Douglas. Please, Jazwares, give us what we want. But with all that said, it's nice to see the Spartan Collection come back, even if it was for one release. So let's open up this bad boy. And starting off with the packaging, we have a nice big old portrait of the Yokai. We have a nice little Jazwares Vault sticker telling us how special we are. And, you know, it's just the standard Vault packaging. On the side, we have the Spartan Yokai yet again. And then on the other side is a whole lot, nothing, just a peek into the packaging. And then the back, we have a full body shot of the figure and a brief description of everything that will be included. So that's pretty neat. Not really a whole lot going on, not the most exciting packaging, but it is what it is. And then when we go back to the front, we can actually open this up like the NECA packaging, and we get to see the figure and everything is there. We get another Jazwares Vault sticker, we get the title of the figure, and yeah, it's everything seems to be there. So let's open up this bad boy. So right out of the box, when you compare the Yokais to the Yorori's paint job, you can clearly see that the Yokai is taking a less serious approach to their appearance, which was an interesting choice to say nonetheless. And I wouldn't be surprised if the armor coating that Jazwares chose for the Yokai was the make or break factor on whether someone wanted to buy this figure or not. And regardless of armor coating, I was going to pick up this figure because I have a problem and I can't say no to the Spartan collection. For the two of you that want to know what pieces of armor this figure uses so you can recreate it in game, and starting off with the armor coating, you'll need the Neon Honor. As for the chest piece, and hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, the Jade Iron Plate. As for the shoulders and the knee pads, you'll need the Dragon Bark. Then for the gloves, you'll need the First Temple, which are the default gloves for the Tenrai core, so you don't really need to change anything there. Your utility piece will be the First Principle Blades. And for those who are completely blind or just couldn't figure it out already, the helmet is of course the Yokai helmet. But when it comes to the actual figure, despite the Yokai's interesting appearance, this is actually a really well put together figure visually. So getting into the sculpting work first, Jazwares does do good work with getting down as many details as possible. Obviously, with an action figure of a Spartan, there's the basic line work, layering, and paneling of Spartan armor. But some details that really stood out to me, starting off with the layering of the plates that we see on the shoulders, knees, and waist piece. The whole chest rig, which is really nice with the layering of the straps, the finer details on the rounded parts in the back, and the chest plate itself with the textures and line work given. The rope around the waist looks great with each bump being sculpted, giving it texture. And Jazwares even tried to make the cloth parts look, well, like cloth, which is appreciated. And of course, and pun not intended, the most in your face one, the helmet, from the paneling that separates the different parts of the helmet to the exaggerated facial features, and each tooth is actually sculpted on the mouthpiece. And I just think Jazwares overall did a great job nailing the yokai helmet. And one other thing that I really love about this figure is how glossy what is considered the visor. I just think it's really clean and really pops out from the rest of the figure. Like, it takes this already attention demanding helmet design and just begs for more. As for the paintwork on this figure, I am pleased with it for the most part. This figure is made up mostly of black, which would mean most of the details that I praised this figure for having earlier would be lost easily. But Jazwares did one thing that I've been wanting them to do for a long time, and they actually gave this armor some grit, some wear and tear, just to kind of, you know, make those smaller details pop out. And I mean, if there was a figure to start giving grit, even though they should have been doing this a lot sooner, it would definitely be the yokai. The grit and the wear and tear breaks up the flatness of the black and really allows, like I said earlier, allows for those smaller and finer details to show themselves and pop out. And then of course there's the splashes of bright blue and pink to further help break up the design of this figure. And even if you think this armor coating is gross, I think the usage and the location of the blues and pink are appropriate and aren't too obnoxious for this already bold coating. And I obviously understand that Jazwares didn't pick where the blues and the pinks go. They are just recreating something that 343 made. But that still doesn't change that I think the usage of blues and pinks are used appropriately. So yeah, despite the interesting choice of colors on this figure, I think they were handled well. And Jazwares even addressed the areas of the figure where smaller details could be lost with a nice coating of grit and wear and tear. So all in all, I think Jazwares did a good job with this figure's visuals. And getting into articulation, starting off with the head region, we can rotate the head 360 degrees, and then we can have the yokai look up and down a decent amount. But unfortunately, we can't even sway the head side to side. And moving over to the arm, we get a nice up and over 360 degree rotation. And you get some range when you do bring the arm up and down, but it definitely could be better. It's mostly due to the shoulder piece clashing with the body of the figure. And here we have that same motion but with the arm upwards, and it's actually a little better surprisingly. And then we can get some decent range when we bring the arm back and forth as if the yokai was opening up his arms. And then we actually get a really good elbow bend. That's because it's a double jointed elbow. And then with the hand, we can rotate it 360 degrees and bend the wrist however we please. And unfortunately, unsurprisingly, there is no torso articulation whatsoever on this figure. This has been a pretty common thing with the Spartan collection, and I just wish one day we would get a Spartan collection figure with some torso articulation. And moving over to the legs, we can rotate the legs 360 degrees, and we can pivot the thigh a little bit as well. And then when it comes to the knee bend, we get a really good knee bend because it is double jointed. And then moving down to the boot, you can rotate the boot 360 degrees and bend the ankle however you please. And then you can also swivel the toe of the boot. And one thing that's always been an issue with the Spartan collection that I never really talked about is the positioning of the figure's back when you try to display him kneeling. Due to the lack of torso articulation, when you do position the figure in a kneeling position, the figure's back starts to lean backwards, which looks awkward, and if you try to force the back forward, the front leg gets forced down, making that look awkward as well, so there's really no winning. And one thing I've never been vocal about in my previous videos on the Spartan collection, but one thing I would like to see with these figures is a bicep swivel, which means instead of the bicep rotating from just the shoulder, it would rotate independently from the shoulder and the elbow. And this swivel would allow for the figures to accurately and more comfortably hold their weapons, and spoiler alert, this figure needs it. So amongst the various accessories included with this figure, starting off we have a bunch of swappable hands, the first pair being some holding hands. Then we get two trigger finger hands, which can double as pointing hands. And then we get two open palm hands. And then for the left hand, we do get one closed fist. And for our first weapon, we have the Ravager, which we last saw in Series 4 of the Spartan collection with Spartan Enigma. And when comparing the previous release with this current one, it seems Jazwares Jazwares has given us a slightly improved appearance of the Ravager. These improvements consist of an accurate color change of the wraps around the handles, going from gray to a light brown, and Jazwares colored in red in more areas of the Ravager. As far as the visuals go for the Ravager, it does look pretty good. There's a bunch of line work that they got down on the gun. The vents look great. It looks like they got a whole bunch of detail in there. I really like the wrapping. They could have, just left it flat and, just painted it brown, but they really gave it that texture, making it look like someone took a roll of cloth and actually went over those parts of the gun. So overall, very happy with how that looks. I only have one issue with the Ravager itself, and it's made out of that weird rubbery plastic that Jazwares has been using for a while now. And the only reason that's an issue is because despite the Ravager being a thick, chunky gun, it still has that bend to it, that warp that comes with the weird rubbery plastic that Jazwares chooses for the weapons. And I do have a second issue, but it's not really the Ravager's fault, but because the Ravager is a gun that's on the short side, the figure has a tough time shouldering or holding the gun comfortably, which is why earlier I said I would like to see these figures have a bicep swivel so they could more accurately and comfortably hold their weapons. So throughout the video you will see photos of the yokai holding the Ravager, obviously, but never will it look like he's aiming down sights or anything like that. It'll just be mostly firing from the hip or holding it with one hand. And like with every Spartan Collection figure, you can mount the weapon on the figure's back. You just take a back piece out, plug the peg into the peg hole, and then plug the back piece back into the figure's back, and it sits there all nice and snug. Our next set of weapons is the swords that you see with the first principal blades, and I'm really glad Jazwares turned these into accessories because in-game they're just decorations. And this actually isn't the first time we've seen this where Jazwares has taken a accessory or a decoration from a piece of equipment in Halo and turned it into a weapon / accessory for a figure. We last saw this in Series 8 with the Belosaron with his spear and shield. And as nice as this all might be, an interesting choice made by Jazwares was to make these swords and these sheaths separate accessories rather than having them be all one assembly, where you would be able to store the swords in the sheaths. But granted, the only time this interesting choice by Jazwares is a quote-unquote problem is when you have the figure holding the swords, because now it looks like he has 4 swords, and you could get rid of the sheaths when he holds the swords, but then where is he putting his swords? Where does he store them? You see the issue, but again, otherwise it's whatever. And as for the visual presentation of the blades, they're pretty much the same. Obviously they're different lengths, but the blades are just a nice metallic silver, the hilt is a nice metallic gold, and the handles, I really like the texture that they put on the handles to give it that traditional Japanese blade look. And yeah, overall very happy with how these look as well. And to put the sheaths on the waist like you see with first principle blades, you just fit them through the rope loops and they fit in all nice and snug. It doesn't feel like you're bending or breaking them, and it doesn't feel like they're too loose. And the only time they really get in the way is when you try to have the yokai hold the Ravager with 2 hands, but after that they don't really get in the way of anything else. And one issue I had specifically with the smaller sword was it just did not want to sit in the hands of the yokai without it shaking or just being too loose. Eventually you would be able to rest it somewheres, but it just would fall out super easily, opposed to the full length sword where it just sat in nice and snug. So I'm assuming it has to do with the length of the handles. Here we are at the turntable segment of the video, pretty much where I go over what I like, dislike, pros, cons, strengths, and weaknesses. Just get my general thoughts and opinions out on the figure and give y'all something to bounce off of and go down in the comment section below and get a conversation started. And I most likely will reply to y'all's comments because I obviously love talking about this stuff. And if you haven't seen my videos already, we're going to talk about the sour stuff first. I just like to get the negative stuff out of the way because I don't like dwelling on the negative any longer than I already have to. So 3 things right off the bat all have to do with articulation. The figure can't sway his head side to side. Now personally, it's not the end of the world, but it is something that I like to see on my figures, and this figure does not offer that. Again, he can look side to side and look up and down, so you can get a still good range of motion out of his head, but the more the better. And then there's just the complete lack of torso articulation. Now, I shouldn't be surprised by this. Forever now, we've had no torso articulation in the Spartan collection, but it's something that does still really bother me, because I feel like these figures would be really, really good with some torso articulation. They already come with a bunch of accessories. The figures look really good. They just topped it all off with just fixing that torso articulation and giving us a very solid range of articulation for this figure. I feel like they'd be very much worth what the cost is. And then the third and final thing is the bicep swivel. Now, this isn't the end of the world. The arm articulation overall is really good, but just if we had that bicep swivel, we'd be able to have our figures more comfortably and accurately hold their weapons. So this might be more of a me thing, but I feel like I'd throw it in anyways to see if any of y'all share this same opinion. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't have any issues with the visuals of this figure. Yeah, some people might not like that they used neon honor for the armor coating on this figure, and honestly, it doesn't bother me that much. It's actually kind of grown on me. I really like this cyberpunk, vibe they've given this figure. Besides its very interesting armor coating, I think the figure is sculpted and painted very well. And as for the accessories, I guess my only big issue is the weird rubbery plastic that they use to make the Ravager out of, because it kind of warps and it isn't completely straight. And again, the sheath thing isn't the biggest issue in the world. It's just kind of dumb. If anything, it's not really a problem. So yeah, those are all my issues with the Yokai. And as for the positives, the arm articulation is really great. I know I want a bicep swivel in there, but just overall what we're given is pretty good. The leg articulation is great, and the range in the head, like I said, besides not being able to sway side to side, he's able to look up and down a good amount, and he can rotate his head 360 degrees. So those are some aspects of the articulation that I like. As for the visuals, again, I think he's sculpted really well. They got down a bunch of detail. And as for the paintwork, they give us some grit, some wear and tear to really make those details that would have, gotten lost in the flatness of the black pop out and shine. And again, I think where the placements of the blue and pink are really good and appropriate for this already bold designed coating. And as for the weapons, the Ravager, besides the warping, looks great. The sculpt work is great. The paint work is great. I really like how they went back and improved it upon from its previous release. And as for the swords, I think it's really nice that they made the utility on the armor an actual accessory that you can play with. It adds more value. And speaking of value, $20 for this 6.5 inch decently articulated, really good looking figure that comes with a plethora of accessories. It comes with 3 weapons, it comes with swappable hands. It's just all this stuff for $20. You can't really beat it. It's really good. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm actually happy that I picked up this figure. At first I was skeptical because it kind of looked dumb with the armor coating, and I don't really care for the Tenrai armor core. Honestly, I mean, it looks cool, but I don't wear it in game. I don't have any personal attachment to it, but this was a really fun figure to mess around and tinker with while I worked on this video. And I do recommend picking it up, especially since this is probably one of the last Spartan collection figures that we'll ever get. At least that's what it feels like. Jazwares Vault hasn't really been doing anything with Halo recently. And if you're still looking for a Spartan collection figure that is, not hard to find and, comes with a bunch of stuff, this is definitely that figure. So if there's any takeaway from today's video, it's Jazwares Vault, please bring back the Spartan collection. If not, at least give us Douglas, but I'd love to see more Spartan collection figures. I just can't say no. I don't know if it's because these are the only Halo figures that we are getting at the moment besides 1,000 Toys, but I want more Jazwares, please. And with all that said, I really hope you did enjoy today's video. A like and a subscription would be greatly appreciated. Don't worry about commenting. I get it. It's a lot of effort moving those fingers. But if you do want to bounce off anything I did say throughout the video, you are more than welcome to. I most likely will reply to y'all's comments because I do like talking about this stuff. And don't worry about the bell. We both know that shit is broken. And if you want to see more content like this, there's plenty of it on the channel. I have already reviewed a plethora plethora of Spartan collection figures, so go check that out. And I've also reviewed a handful of other Halo stuff as well. And if you like Star Wars, Alien, Predator, Alien vs Predator, or Warhammer, I have videos on that stuff as well on the channel, so go check that out. And with all that said, please have a great day and stay hydrated. It's important.